Hello everyone and welcome to episode 10 of In the Studio. We're getting towards the end of the series now. I hope everyone's been enjoying the previous episodes. I hope you've found this series useful if you are a writer or a creative of any sort, looking at the screenwriting process. I hope that this is, in some way been useful and you picked up at least one tip along the way. That would be a success for us. And I guess that in many ways we're coming to the end of the series and the end of the screenwriting process. This week we're looking at dialogue, which is obviously a crucial part of any really good screenplays, to have really interesting and complex and convincing dialogue in there. Now, it may not be the same for all writers, I'm sure, but I know that for myself personally and for a lot of the writers that I do kind of converse with regularly, the dialogue does come later on. In terms of refining that, we would, in the early drafts, you would probably just write something like, this character says this, and it doesn't matter if it's really on the nose and obvious and not very poetic. It's all about just getting the words down there. The problem is that writing good dialogue is difficult, which is why I personally leave it until probably the penultimate draft of a project. I tend to get the narrative and the beats and the characters formulated properly first, and then really dig deep and refine the dialogue before the final draft. So this week we're going to get some tips from myself and from the very talented Anthony HETT as well, about how to write good dialogue. Hopefully, again, you will find some of this stuff useful.
Hi everyone, my name's Anthony HETT and I'm a London-based Welsh writer and director. I graduated from City, University of London with an MA Creative Writing, Plays and Screenplays, and since graduating I've made a trilogy of short films that focus on the themes of loneliness, old age and dementia. These films have been selected for numerous film festivals, and I've also been lucky enough for them to be nominated for and even win a couple of awards, including my most recent short, Scrabble, which won the Best Short Film at the International Film Festival of Wales, and also picked up both the Audience Award and the Jury Prize at this year's Celador Film Festival. Now I'm here to talk a little bit about dialogue. Writing engaging and realistic dialogue is something that I've been complimented on, and is something that I think is hopefully a strength within my writing. So I'm going to give you some top tips around writing dialogue, and they're going to be based around writing realistic dialogue. Dialogue is something that I could just talk about all day long, but I'm going to try and keep it nice and succinct, which is what I like to try and do with the dialogue when I'm writing my films. I've got 5 top tips, and the first one is last but not least. I strongly believe that dialogue should be one of the final pieces of the puzzle. So I would recommend that you write the dialogue at the end of the process, once you've got the story kind of all set as much as you can. There's 2 main reasons that I recommend this. The first one is because it affords you the time necessary to concentrate solely on writing the dialogue without having to think about anything else. Secondly, hopefully it will also save you time, because if you're altering and changing the story and the ending a lot, and you've already started writing the dialogue, you might find that you spend a lot of time editing and even starting whole sections of dialogue over, and you want to try and avoid that as much as you can. My second top tip is show don't tell. So this is like one of the golden rules of cinema. We're writing a screenplay, it's not a play. There's a reason why plays have lots of exposition, but we want to avoid having any exposition in our films if possible. Now obviously sound, music, dialogue, they're all super important, and sound I often think is often overlooked and underappreciated. They're really important parts of a film. The sound, the music, the dialogue, but at the end of the day, film is a visual medium, so you want to make sure that you're not saying anything with your dialogue that could be better said with an image. Okay, My third top tip is economy. So word choice, that's a massive subject, something again that I could talk about all day long. The importance of word choice, whether you're writing novels or poetry or films, word choice is super important. I'm going to try and kind of make it as simple as possible. When you're editing your screenplay, you've finished, you've written all the dialogue and you're looking over it, I'd really strongly recommend that you look at each and every single line of dialogue and you ask yourself, what is this line doing? What's its purpose? Okay? I strongly believe that all lines of dialogue should be either telling you something about the story, something about one of the characters, or the relationship between different characters. If you look at a line of dialogue and it doesn't seem to be doing any of these things, then I would recommend that you cut that line. I do really believe that all lines of dialogue should be moving the story forward, or they should be giving you or giving the audience a key piece of information. Top tip number 4, individual voice. For me, there's nothing worse than reading a script, watching a film, and all the characters just sound the same. All the lines of dialogue could be just interchangeable. It doesn't matter who says what line. I think it's really important that all of the characters have their own distinct individual voices. And the way you're going to get that individual voice is by understanding who that character is, so you can then understand the way that they speak. Because there's so many things that affect how we talk. Our background, our education, our career, where we grew up, all these things and so many other factors affect how we speak, our word choices, our phrases, how we word things. So I think it's really important to get that individual voice, and the way you're going to get that is by understanding who your characters are, and then you can understand how they speak, and then you can write the dialogue and all your characters are going to sound different. Okay, that was my 4th top tip. My last top tip is read it aloud, or more specifically, hear it read aloud. So it's really very difficult to fully understand how well your dialogue is going to translate from the page onto the screen. You know, your dialogue might sound really great in your head. It might sound really great when you recite it in front of the bathroom mirror. You know, you've got to hear it read aloud. Read it yourself. But even then, the only way that you're going to understand fully how your dialogue sounds when it's read by an actor is hearing it read by an actor. So I would always strongly recommend, it doesn't matter how confident you are in your dialogue writing abilities, I'd always recommend that you have some sort of rehearsal before you give that final shooting script to your producer, or if you're working with the director, whoever it is, to the actors. Before you've got that shooting script, make sure you have some sort of rehearsal. And this doesn't have to be like a full-blown dress rehearsal in the location. You know, it can be a table read, it can be some sort of read-through across Zoom or Skype, or, you know, it doesn't matter how you do it. Last but not least, so leave it till the end of the process to write your dialogue. Show, don't tell. So we don't want any exposition in there. Economy, so think about your word choice, have a look at all of the lines, every single one of them, and ask yourself, what is the purpose of this line? Individual voice, and make sure that your characters don't all sound the same, and even worse than that, don't all just sound like you as the writer. And then finally, make sure that you hear those lines of dialogue read aloud before that script is ready to shoot. So those are my 5 top tips. Thank you for listening, for watching. I hope that you found it interesting, and most of all, I hope that you found it helpful.
So I think one of the most difficult things when it comes to dialogue is probably the voice of a character being portrayed through that dialogue. You know, it's very difficult in a screenplay where you've maybe got 3 main characters, some supporting characters, and some more really small characters. It can be difficult sometimes for one person to give a voice to all these different characters. So that's a big reason of why I wait until a much later stage of the process. because you've kind of invested in those characters by then, especially your lead characters. You're going to know those people inside out, or you should do. So I think it's really important when you do get to the stage of refining dialogue to really kind of distinguish each character and know these characters inside out, and know even the smallest little intricacies of what they would do and say in a certain situation. You know, how would they react? How would they voice their feelings and thoughts? Would they be honest or hide things? Would they be, you know, direct or subtle? And I guess that part of this is even down to little things like slang words. The whole personality of a character needs to be told through the dialogue. So the best thing to do is really set those characters apart in your own mind and on the page as well, and give each character a little kind of trait and a quirk and as I say, distinguishing feature to their vocabulary and their dialogue that will really make those jump off the page. And essentially what the end goal for that is, what you need to have in place, is that anyone could read that screenplay knowing those characters and instantly know which character is talking without having to see the name. You know, do just a really rough kind of read through of the script. You don't need to completely put your all into it and become an actor, but you know, a good read through of the script will definitely highlight any points of dialogue that feel unconvincing and a bit kind of jarring, and I think you'll very easily see and realise which bits of your screenplay dialogue need work if you do things like that. I've done it tons of times where, you know, you write something that on paper and in your head looks and feels like the perfect line of dialogue, and it's so poetic and perfect, and when you actually read it out loud, it feels clunky and forced and isn't anything that any human being would ever say, never mind that character. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately. There's certain rules to writing dialogue, and you have to realise that if you're the writer and you're reading that screenplay and you can't even read those words without feeling like they don't feel natural, then how would you expect your actors to, and the director to follow through with that kind of screenplay and that dialogue? So it can be quite a unnerving and uncomfortable process to go through, to read out your own words and hear other people read those words to you as well, but it's an absolutely invaluable process. So thank you once again, everybody, for watching this episode and the series so far. I hope there was some useful tips there for refining that dialogue in the final stages of the drafting process. And again, thank you to Anthony for joining us for this episode as well. I just want to say a big thank you and a big shout out to 4 people who have supported us massively in the last week, a couple of weeks. You may have seen that we recently launched a Patreon service, which is a really big deal for us at JumpCut Studios. We're really excited about the plans that we've got in place when this really kind of kicks into gear. All the money that we get from the Patreon service is going to be going towards helping other creatives out there, inexperienced and young and new creatives, to develop their own projects. And we just want to give a big shout out to the 4 patrons that we've got so far. Big thank you to Dave Nuttall, Kristen Brookman, the _ Studios team, and John Bridges as well. Thank you guys for your support. It means the absolute world. Cannot stress enough how important it is to have you guys behind us, and we can't wait to have more people on board. If you do want to check out our Patreon and subscribe to one of the tiers, you will get a ton of perks, as well as obviously the knowledge that you are supporting the indie film industry. So check out the link in the description to this video. Check us out on Twitter as well, where we're talking about this all the time at the minute. And just once again, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and join us again next week.